AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she tried to wear a white dress? So, I, 28F, got married last week. My wedding was a dream come true. Beautiful location, amazing food, great music, and of course, the most incredible dress. I've been planning this day for years, and it was everything I imagined. I wanted it to be perfect, and I spent months making sure all the details were in place. My sister, 31F, who I'll call Liz, has always been a bit difficult. Growing up, she always needed to be the center of attention. If I had something nice, she wanted something nicer. If I achieved something, she'd try to one-up me. It's always been a bit of a competition between us, but I've learned to deal with it over the years. Despite all this, I wanted her to be my maid of honor. I thought it would be a nice gesture to show her that I loved her despite all our differences. But of course, that was a mistake. From the start, she was very vocal about her opinions on the wedding. She didn't like my choice of venue. She didn't like my wedding dress. She didn't like my choice of bridesmaids. She tried to suggest all these changes that I didn't want. But I let it slide because I wanted to keep the peace. I even gave her the freedom to pick her own dress since I didn't want to dictate what she wore. I only had one rule: no white, off-white, or anything remotely similar to my wedding dress. I made it very clear to her that I didn't want anyone wearing white, not even ivory or cream. I explained that I wanted to be the only one in a white dress, and I thought it was important for everyone to respect that. She seemed fine with it at the time. In fact, she said she understood and that she would choose a color that would complement the wedding theme. Fast forward to the day before the wedding. Liz calls me in a panic. She says her dress arrived, and there's been a mistake. The dress is white. I immediately told her that I couldn't have her wearing white to my wedding. I told her she needed to fix this and find another dress, but she insisted it was too late and that she couldn't find anything else in time. She was going on and on about how she really liked the dress and how it fit her so well, and that she didn't have time for returns or exchanges. At this point, I'm getting frustrated. I tell her she needs to find something else, or she won't be allowed to attend the wedding. She's my sister, and I didn't want to make a huge deal out of it, but I didn't want to be overshadowed by someone else wearing white. I explained how it would look bad and that it was just a simple request. She called me dramatic and said I was overreacting. I told her I wasn't overreacting and that if she couldn't respect my wishes, I would have no choice but to uninvite her. She hung up on me, and I thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, as I was getting ready for my wedding, Liz showed up at the venue, wearing the white dress. She seemed completely unfazed, as if nothing was wrong. When I saw her, I immediately lost it. I told her to leave. I told her she couldn't be there in that dress, that it was disrespectful and selfish, and that she needed to go home. She refused to leave. She said I was ruining her day and being a bridezilla. She even tried to argue that I should let her stay because she had spent so much money on the dress and couldn't return it. I was furious, and eventually the staff had to get involved. They escorted Liz out of the venue, and I went on with my day. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but I felt like I made the right decision. The wedding went off without a hitch, and everything was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the guilt about what happened with Liz. I later got a series of angry texts from Liz, calling me a spoiled brat and saying I'd humiliated her. She said I'd ruined our relationship and that she would never forgive me for what I did. She even implied that I would never be able to get away with something like that if the roles were reversed. Our parents are also really upset with me, and they've been telling me that I went too far. They think I should have just let it go and let Liz wear whatever she wanted. They say I overreacted and that now I've created a rift in the family that may never heal. I don't know if I did the right thing. I felt like I was within my rights to protect my day, but now I'm questioning myself. I just wanted to have a wedding where I could be the bride, you know? Is it unreasonable to expect my sister to respect my wishes about something so important to me? AITA? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she made a scene over my dress. So here's the situation. I'm 28F, getting married next month to the love of my life, Jason, 30M. I've been planning this wedding for about a year, and it's been pretty smooth sailing until recently. I have a sister, Sarah, 32F, who's always been a little difficult, not in a malicious way, but she tends to make everything about herself, and she's had some jealousy issues throughout the years. I've always tried to be supportive of her, but sometimes she takes things a bit too far. About 6 months ago, I found the dress of my dreams. It's an ivory, off-the-shoulder, A-line gown. I was absolutely in love with it the second I saw it, and after trying it on, I knew it was the one. It fit perfectly, and I felt beautiful in it. I showed Sarah pictures of it when I went shopping with my mom, and she seemed genuinely happy for me. At least I thought she was. Fast forward to about a month ago, I was visiting Sarah at her place to catch up and talk about wedding stuff. I mentioned how excited I was that my wedding was coming up, and she casually asked to see the dress again. I showed her the pictures, and she went quiet for a second. Then she said, I don't think that a very flattering dress on you. I think it makes you look a little wide. I was shocked. I don't have a perfect body, and I've struggled with my weight in the past, but I thought I looked great in the dress. I brushed it off, assuming she was just having a bad day or something, but then she kept going. It's fine if you want to look like that, but I just don't think it's the best choice for you. I honestly didn't know how to respond. It felt hurtful, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So I told her I still loved the dress, and it was what I felt confident in. A couple of weeks later, my mom and I went to a bridal boutique for a fitting, and when I showed my mom the dress, she was over the moon. She said it was perfect, that it looked amazing on me, and that it was the right choice. I told Sarah about the fitting a few days later, and instead of congratulating me or saying anything nice, she responded with, "Wow, you really went with that one." Huh? If that's what you want, I guess it's fine, but just know I wouldn't have picked it. This got me a little irritated, but I didn't let it show. I just said, well, it's my wedding, so it's my choice. That seemed to shut her up for a while, or so I thought. A week ago, things took a really weird turn. I was at home with Jason, and we were going over some final details for the wedding when I got a call from Sarah. She sounded upset, but she wouldn't tell me what was going on. I told her to come over, and when she showed up, she was practically in tears. She started off with, "I'm sorry, I'm just really upset about the wedding." I asked what was wrong, and she went on this long rant about how she felt like I wasn't being fair to her. She said that I hadn't included her enough in the planning process and that I hadn't listened to her opinions on the dress. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "I can't be a part of this wedding if you're going to wear that dress. I won't be in your wedding if you wear that dress." I was stunned. My first instinct was to laugh because I thought she was joking, but she was serious. She was really upset about the dress. I asked her why, and she explained that she thought it was too unflattering and not wedding dress material. She also mentioned that I was making a huge mistake by choosing something that didn't fit the occasion. I told her that this wasn't her decision, it was mine, and that if she didn't want to be a part of the wedding because of a dress, that was on her. She cried even harder and said, "I just don't want to watch you make a fool of yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her I couldn't have her ruining this for me, that I was marrying the man of my dreams, and I wasn't going to let her negativity affect it. She stormed out, and I didn't hear from her for a few days. I figured she needed space, but then she showed up again at my house last night. This time, she was holding a dress bag. I opened the door, and she immediately said, "I bought a dress for your wedding. I'm going to wear it as a statement, so everyone knows I'm not okay with you wearing that dress." She held up a red satin dress, and I could tell she was dead serious. At this point, I was absolutely furious. I told her, "You can't just come here and try to force me to wear something I don't want. I don't know what's going on with you, but I can't keep doing this." She tried to argue, but I told her that if she was going to behave like this, I didn't want her at the wedding. I told her to leave, and I called her a drama queen. She left, and we haven't spoken since. I feel like I did the right thing by standing my ground. It's my wedding, and I'm not going to let anyone dictate what I wear or how I feel. But now, my mom is upset with me because she thinks I overreacted. She says I should have just let Sarah be a little dramatic and try to work things out more calmly. I'm getting a lot of pressure from other family members to apologize and have Sarah back in the wedding, but I don't know if I can. So, AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding over the dress? Maybe I should have handled it differently, but I don't think I did anything wrong. What do you think? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law live with us after she left her husband? So, to give you some context, my husband, Alex, and I have been married for 8 years. We don't have kids yet, and our relationship has always been strong. We both work from home, so we spend a lot of time together, and honestly, we're very content with our setup. We live in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment, and it's been perfect for the two of us. My sister-in-law, Sarah, has been married to my brother-in-law, Matt, for about 5 years. Their marriage has always seemed rocky. Sarah and Matt fight constantly, and it's honestly exhausting to be around them. I've tried to stay out of it, but whenever they visit, you can tell that something's off. My husband and I both agreed that Sarah was the more difficult person in the relationship, while Matt, although he had his issues, seemed like he tried to make it work. That said, their marriage wasn't exactly happy, and we'd often hear about their ongoing problems whenever Sarah came over. So about 3 months ago, Sarah called me out of the blue and said she needed to talk. I was expecting her to complain about Matt again, but she dropped a bombshell. She had left him. Apparently, she had been unhappy for a while, and after a particularly bad argument, she decided to pack her things and leave. I was shocked, and not gonna lie, a part of me was relieved because I always thought she treated Matt pretty badly. But at the same time, I felt bad for him because, as much as they fought, he really seemed to care about her. Sarah asked if she could stay with us for a while. At first, I hesitated. Our apartment is small, and while I love Sarah, I wasn't sure how well she would fit into our routine. I knew she wasn't the most considerate guest, and the thought of living with her long-term felt like a strain. But she was family, and I figured it would only be for a short time. So, after some back and forth with Alex, we agreed to let her stay. The first couple of weeks were fine. Sarah kept to herself, mostly. She was going through a tough time, and we tried to be supportive. But after the initial adjustment period, things started to go south. Sarah became more and more demanding. She'd constantly ask to borrow our car, we only have one, take up all the space in the bathroom, and leave her stuff all over the place. It wasn't just that, though. She started to get really critical of our home and the way we lived. I'm not one for confrontation, but after a few snarky comments about how small our place was, I started to get annoyed. The tipping point came one evening when Alex and I were having a quiet dinner. We were discussing our plans for the weekend when Sarah walked into the room and started giving us unsolicited advice about how we should manage our finances. I was stunned. She started talking about how we should be saving more and investing better, even though she's the one who had just left her husband because of money issues. The irony was not lost on me, and I felt my temper flare. I tried to brush it off, but I could feel myself getting more irritated with every word she said. Later that night, I told Alex that I needed to have a serious talk with Sarah. He agreed, but said he didn't want to get involved since it was more my problem than his. So, I sat down with Sarah the next day and explained that I felt like her living with us was starting to affect our relationship. I told her that while we loved her and wanted to help, we needed some boundaries. I told her that it wasn't working for us to have her constantly around, and I needed her to respect our space and routine. Sarah was furious. She accused me of being unsupportive, selfish, and inconsiderate. She told me that I was siding with Matt, and that I didn't care about her well-being. I tried to explain that it wasn't about Matt, but about maintaining the balance in our home. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She said she would leave, but only if we gave her enough money to find a new place to live. She made it clear that she didn't want to go back to Matt, and she couldn't afford a place on her own without our financial help. I was taken aback. This wasn't the kind of help I had envisioned giving her when we let her stay. I told her that we couldn't afford to give her a large sum of money. We're not wealthy by any means, and that she needed to figure out a solution for herself. She got even angrier, and that's when I told her she had to leave. Sarah ended up calling Matt to pick her up, and she left that same evening. The whole thing left me feeling emotionally drained. It was uncomfortable and awkward, but I thought I had made the right decision. I had tried to be kind and helpful, but at some point, enough was enough. A few days later, I got a call from my mother-in-law. She was upset and asked me why I kicked Sarah out. She said I had been too harsh and that family should always stick together. She also mentioned that Sarah was really struggling and it wasn't fair to put that kind of pressure on her when she was already going through a tough time. I tried to explain my side, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to understand. Since then, I've received a few more calls from other relatives, all of them telling me that I could have handled things better. I've been feeling guilty, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that I did the right thing. I didn't want Sarah to stay with us indefinitely, and I couldn't afford to be her financial safety net when she refused to go back to her husband. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law live with us after she left her husband? So, a little background. My fiancé, let's call him Mark, and I have been together for 3 years. We got engaged about 6 months ago, and after the initial excitement wore off, we started making plans for our wedding. Our families have always had their issues, nothing out of the ordinary, but it's mostly been manageable. One family member, however, has made things pretty difficult. That would be my sister-in-law, Rebecca. She's my brother's wife, and honestly, I've never gotten along with her. We tolerate each other at family gatherings, but there's always been tension between us. She's the type of person who loves drama and isn't afraid to stir things up if she's not the center of attention. I've tried to avoid conflict, but she's always found a way to make things about her. The big issue started a few weeks ago when we sent out our wedding invites. Mark and I decided to have a fairly intimate wedding, just close family and friends. We didn't want to make it a huge, extravagant event, so we set a guest limit. And as we went through the list, we realized we couldn't invite everyone we wanted to. Rebecca, who has 2 kids, age 5 and 7, immediately demanded that they be included in the guest count. I had no problem with her kids attending, if they were well-behaved and the situation allowed for it. But we were limiting the number of guests, and it was going to be a tight squeeze. I was already feeling the pressure to balance all the family dynamics and didn't want to create more tension. So, I told her that I'd have to check the numbers and get back to her. Rebecca didn't take that well. She started texting me nonstop, arguing that the kids were family and should automatically be included. At first, I tried to stay calm and explain that we had to make some tough decisions and space was limited. I told her that if I could find a way to fit them in, I'd be more than happy to do so, but I wasn't making any promises. A few days later, Rebecca called me up, absolutely furious. She accused me of excluding her children from a family event and said I was being selfish by prioritizing other people over my niece and nephew. At this point, I was getting exhausted by the constant back and forth, and I simply told her that we were sticking to our guest list and the kids wouldn't be invited. Rebecca's reaction? She went completely off the rails. She called my fiancé and me classless, claiming that we were trying to have a wedding without any respect for family. She went on a huge rant about how it wasn't right to ban her children from attending the wedding, and that we were ruining our relationship with her by not letting them come. To make matters worse, she posted about it on social media, accusing us of being disrespectful and cold-hearted to family. She even went as far as calling my fiancé spineless for letting me make this decision. My phone started blowing up with messages from family members, most of whom sided with Rebecca. Some were saying things like, "Why can't you make an exception for the kids?" And, "It's just a wedding, it's not the end of the world to have a few more kids there." I tried to explain that we had a plan, and it wasn't about the kids specifically, it was about the number of guests we could handle. But it didn't matter. The argument kept escalating, and I was starting to feel incredibly stressed out. Then it got worse. A week before the wedding, I received a call from my brother, who was clearly pissed off. He told me that he and Rebecca were both deeply hurt by our decision and that if the kids weren't invited, they wouldn't be coming to the wedding at all. I felt like I was caught in a horrible situation. I didn't want to lose my brother over something like this, but at the same time, I didn't want to cave and let Rebecca manipulate the situation. It was a nightmare. I discussed it with Mark, and we both agreed that we didn't want our wedding day to be overshadowed by this drama. So, we decided that if Rebecca and my brother refused to come without the kids, we would just have to move forward without them. We stood firm on our decision. We couldn't have our wedding turned into a circus, and we didn't want to start our marriage with a bunch of resentment and family issues hanging over us. The day of the wedding came, and things were tense. Rebecca and my brother didn't show up, and several of our extended family members who had been siding with her also pulled out. I felt hurt, but I was also relieved that I didn't have to deal with the drama. The ceremony was beautiful, and we had an amazing time celebrating with the people who were there. After the wedding, Rebecca blew up my phone again, accusing me of ruining her family and making this all about me instead of about love and family. She told me I was being a bridezilla and that no one would ever forgive me for what I'd done. She even went as far as sending a message to my parents, telling them that I was being disrespectful and cruel. My parents were upset by the whole situation, but they also agreed that the guest list was our decision to make. Now I'm left wondering if I was too harsh. Did I make the right call by sticking to the guest list and standing up to Rebecca's demands? I never want to hurt anyone, but I also didn't want to give in to unreasonable pressure. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids attend my wedding after she publicly humiliated my fiancé and me. AITA for refusing to pay my sister's rent after she got fired. So a bit of backstory. I, 27M, have an older sister, Rachel, 30F, who has always been a bit of a free spirit. She's not really responsible in the traditional sense, and ever since we were kids, she's been more of a live-in-the-moment type. While I've always been more of a planner, I try to be supportive of her choices, even though I often find myself picking up the pieces when things go wrong. For the past few years, Rachel has been working at a small marketing firm, but she's always been somewhat unreliable when it comes to things like showing up on time or getting work done. She'd complain about her job constantly, how it wasn't fulfilling, or how she wasn't getting enough credit. I'd listen, give advice, and help her figure things out. About 2 months ago, Rachel told me that she was going to be taking a break from work. She said her boss had been really critical and it was making her anxious, so she was going to focus on her mental health. I tried to be understanding, but I also reminded her that taking a break meant she wouldn't have money coming in. She brushed it off, saying she'd figure it out. Well, fast forward to 2 weeks ago, when Rachel calls me, telling me that she's been let go from her job. Apparently, she'd missed several deadlines and had a falling out with her boss. She said they were forcing her out and that it wasn't her fault, but I could tell she was avoiding talking about how her lack of responsibility had led to this. She begged me for help, saying she couldn't make rent and might get evicted if she didn't pay in a few days. I could tell she was desperate, and I felt bad for her, but I also knew that this wasn't the first time she'd found herself in a financial bind. She's lived paycheck to paycheck for as long as I can remember, never putting anything aside for emergencies or planning for the future. I talked to my girlfriend, 28F, and we discussed the situation. While I didn't want to let my sister down, I was also really frustrated with her lack of responsibility. My girlfriend suggested that we could offer Rachel a small loan to get her through this rough patch, but I was hesitant. I didn't want this to become a recurring thing where Rachel just expected me to bail her out every time she made bad choices. I ultimately decided to tell Rachel that I wouldn't be paying her rent. I explained that I couldn't keep enabling her behavior, and that she needed to start taking responsibility for her own finances and future. I also told her that I was happy to help her look for another job, but I wasn't going to hand her money to cover her mistakes anymore. Rachel was furious. She called me every name under the sun, accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive. She said I was lucky to have my life together, and that it wasn't fair for me to just abandon her when she needed me the most. I explained that I wasn't abandoning her, but that I couldn't keep sacrificing my own well-being to rescue her from the consequences of her own actions. The whole thing spiraled from there. Rachel went to my parents, telling them I was being cruel and that I didn't care about family. My mom called me in tears, saying that I was being heartless and that I should just help Rachel out this one time. I stood my ground, explaining again that I couldn't just keep enabling her. My dad was more supportive of my decision, but he didn't want to get involved in the middle of our fight. Now, Rachel hasn't spoken to me in weeks, and my parents are mad at me. They keep saying I need to show compassion for my sister and that family should help each other out when things get tough. I get it, but I also feel like I've been helping Rachel for years, and I've seen no effort from her to change or be more responsible. So, AITA for refusing to pay my sister's rent and not helping her out this time. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her kids to my wedding after she demanded that they be included in the ceremony. So this is a bit of a long story, but I really need advice on whether I'm being unreasonable or not. I, 29F, am getting married in 3 months to my fiancée, 32M, and things have been moving along smoothly until recently when my sister, 31F, made a series of requests that I feel are completely over the top. To give a little background, my sister and I have never had the best relationship. Growing up, we were always more like distant acquaintances than close siblings, and our personalities are very different. I'm pretty reserved and like things to be calm and organized, while she's more chaotic, loud, and tends to make everything about her. This has caused some tension throughout our lives, especially when it comes to big family events. The issue started when I sent out the wedding invitations about 2 months ago. I made the decision not to invite kids to the wedding. I love my niece and nephew, 6 and 4 years old, but I just felt that for a formal, somewhat intimate wedding, having kids running around and possibly disrupting things wasn't ideal. I made sure to mention this in the invitation, and my sister didn't seem thrilled, but I thought that would be the end of it. A week after the invitations went out, I got a phone call from my sister. She was upset, saying she didn't understand why her kids weren't invited and that it wasn't fair. I calmly explained my reasoning, emphasizing that it was a personal decision and that we were trying to keep the guest list limited to adults only for the sake of the event's tone and atmosphere. She wasn't happy with my answer, but agreed to attend without her kids. Fast forward a month, and I get another call from my sister. This time, she told me that she had spoken with her husband, and they were planning to bring the kids anyway, because they didn't feel comfortable leaving them with a sitter for such a long day. I once again explained the no kids rule, and she argued that her kids would be well-behaved and could sit quietly. I told her I understood, but it was about maintaining a certain vibe and making sure everyone respected the boundaries I set for the event. She didn't like that response, but we ended the conversation agreeing to disagree. But then, things took a weird turn. A couple of weeks ago, my sister reached out again, and this time, it was even more demanding. She said that she didn't care what I thought, but that her kids were going to be in the ceremony. She wanted them to be the flower girl and ring bearer. When I asked her why she thought this was a good idea, she gave me a lengthy speech about how the kids were part of the family, and that this was a moment they'd remember forever, and that it would be unfair to exclude them. She also made it clear that if they weren't included, she wouldn't be attending the wedding. I was shocked. Not only was she disregarding my request about not bringing kids to the wedding, but now she was trying to take control of a significant part of the ceremony, something I had already planned. I politely explained that I had already selected people for the roles of flower girl and ring bearer, who were close friends of mine, and that there was no room for any changes. She then got angry and accused me of not caring about her family and being selfish. According to her, it was my wedding, but her kids should have been a priority since they were family. At this point, I felt like I was being cornered. I told her that while I understand her wanting her kids to be part of the wedding, the ceremony wasn't the place for them to take on those roles. She threw a fit and said that if her kids couldn't be involved, then she would boycott the wedding entirely. She said I was choosing strangers over my own family. I tried to remain calm, but honestly, I was starting to lose patience. I told her she could either come and respect the decisions I made for my wedding, or she could stay home. I made it clear that if she chose to stay home, I wouldn't hold it against her, but I wouldn't be changing the wedding to accommodate her. Since that conversation, things have been pretty tense. My sister has been posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about weddings that forget about family and how some people will never understand the importance of including children. I've also had some relatives reach out, asking me why I'm being so rigid and not compromising on this. I know I don't have to explain myself to anyone, but some of these comments are starting to get under my skin. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her kids to the wedding, especially after she tried to take over part of the ceremony. I feel like I'm being reasonable, but I'm wondering if I'm missing something or if I'm just being too stubborn about it all. I don't want to lose my relationship with her, but at the same time, I don't think I should have to change my entire wedding for her and her family. Any advice would be appreciated. I, 26M, have been dating my girlfriend, Maya, 25F, for almost 3 years now. She's honestly amazing, smart, funny, kind, and we just click on so many levels. We're in a pretty serious relationship, and although we don't live together yet, I can see us doing that in the near future. We met each other's friends and some extended family, and everything has gone really well. I come from a big, close-knit family. My parents are in their mid-50s and have been married for over 30 years. I have 2 younger sisters, both in their early 20s, and we see each other at least once a month for family dinners or holidays. My family tends to do large gatherings every summer, like a big family reunion, and this year was no exception. My parents started planning it a couple of months ago, and the invites went out for a weekend-long event at a cabin upstate. We've had these reunions every summer for as long as I can remember, and it's always a big deal. Family comes from all over the place to attend, and there's usually a mix of close relatives and distant ones who only pop in for these events. Here's where things started to go sideways. When the invites went out, Maya wasn't included. I didn't think much of it first, assuming my parents just hadn't met her yet or were waiting until we were more official. But after a couple of weeks, I noticed it was strange. My parents knew we were serious, and they'd met Maya before a couple of smaller family gatherings. We'd even spent holidays together. Still, I brushed it off and figured I'd ask closer to the date. A week before the reunion, I casually mentioned to my mom that Maya was excited to spend the weekend with me and was looking forward to the reunion. My mom was a bit surprised and said, "Oh, I thought it was just going to be family this year." I tried to hide my confusion and said, "Well, Maya is part of my life now, and I thought she'd be included." My mom seemed a little uncomfortable, but then told me, "We didn't plan on inviting her this year, honey. It's just how things are sometimes." I tried to brush it off, but something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. I thought about it for a day or two and then decided I had to bring it up with my dad. I don't know what I was expecting, but when I asked him why Maya wasn't invited, he said, "It's just family. I don't want it to be awkward." I was honestly stunned. I asked, "What do you mean?" "Maya is practically family at this point. We've been together for years." He shrugged and said, "It's just that it's a family tradition, and you've only been with her a few years." That really upset me, and I felt like I had to stand up for my relationship. I've always been close to my parents, but this felt like they were drawing a line between me and my girlfriend in a way I wasn't okay with. I knew they loved me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were treating her like she was somehow less than because she wasn't officially married to me yet, or whatever their reasoning was. I decided to confront them both together. I sat down with them a few days later and said, "I need to talk to you about the reunion. Maya is important to me, and I feel really hurt that you didn't invite her." The conversation quickly escalated into a bit of shouting match. My mom said, "It's not personal, it's just tradition. We've always kept it to just the core family." My dad echoed her, adding, "We don't want things to get complicated or uncomfortable." I tried to explain that this wasn't about tradition anymore. Maya was part of my life, and if they really wanted me there, they needed to include her. I told them, "I'm not asking for a huge gesture. I'm just asking you to respect my relationship." At this point, they started getting defensive. My dad said, "This isn't about respecting your relationship. It's about family." My mom looked at me and said, "Maybe you're just putting too much pressure on things. And not that we don't like Maya. It's just, this is how we do things." It felt like they weren't hearing me at all, and I got really upset. I told them that I couldn't be part of an event that excluded someone I cared about, and that I was really hurt by how they were treating Maya. I basically said that if they couldn't include her, then I wouldn't go. They seemed shocked by my ultimatum. The weekend of the reunion came around, and I stuck to my guns. I stayed home with Maya instead of going, which was honestly hard for me because I love my family and hate feeling like I'm choosing sides. But Maya was really understanding, and we spent the weekend together doing our own thing. The fallout was immediate. My parents were not happy at all. My mom sent me a long text saying that I was making a scene over something that didn't need to be a big deal and that it wasn't the right time for her to come. My dad called and said, "I'm disappointed in you. We've always had our family traditions, and you've gone and ruined it." It's been a week since the reunion, and I'm still trying to figure out if I was out of line. On one hand, I can see how it might have been important to them to keep the event small and focused on the immediate family. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm entitled to bring my girlfriend to family events if we're as serious as I believe we are. I hate the idea that my parents don't see her as part of the family just because we're not married. So, AITA for standing my ground and refusing to attend the reunion unless my girlfriend was invited. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she kicked me out of our parents' house. So, a bit of background. I'm 28, and my younger sister, Sarah, is 24. We've always had a pretty rocky relationship, but we've also had our fair share of good moments. Growing up, Sarah was the golden child. She was always the one our parents focused on, the one who got the best grades, the one who never caused trouble. I, on the other hand, was a bit more rebellious. I didn't fit into the mold they wanted, so I spent a lot of my childhood trying to avoid constant lectures and criticism. That dynamic created a lot of tension between us. Things came to a head when I was 19. I had just started college and my parents kicked me out of the house. It wasn't really an official eviction, but they made it clear that they didn't want me living with them anymore. They didn't approve of my major, art history, and they felt like I wasn't taking life seriously. The problem is I didn't have anywhere else to go. My friends had already left for school or lived too far away. It was a mess. In a moment of desperation, I called Sarah and asked if I could stay with her. She had just moved into her own apartment, and I figured she might be the one person who could help me out. I didn't expect her to drop everything for me, but I thought she would at least offer a temporary solution. Instead, Sarah told me she couldn't have me living with her because she didn't want to deal with my drama. She also said that I had burned too many bridges with the family, and she didn't want to be caught in the middle. Needless to say, I was heartbroken. My parents had kicked me out, and my sister wouldn't even give me a place to crash. I ended up staying with some friends for a while, and eventually I found a room to rent. Over the years, Sarah and I barely spoke. We didn't have any major fights, but the tension between us was always there. I didn't expect much from her after that, and I think she felt the same way. Fast forward to a few months ago. Sarah's been living in the city for a few years now, and we've started reconnecting slowly. She reached out and apologized for how she treated me when I was younger, and we started talking more frequently. I was cautiously optimistic, but I didn't want to get my hopes up too high. We hung out a few times, went out to dinner, and even went on a short weekend trip together. For a while, things seemed better. Then, a few weeks ago, I got a call from Sarah. She said she was going through some personal issues, that her relationship with her boyfriend was falling apart, and that she'd been having trouble at work. She said she couldn't stay in her apartment anymore because it was too emotionally draining and that she needed a place to stay. I was surprised, but honestly, I felt like maybe this was my chance to be the bigger person. I told her she could stay with me for a little while. I have a 2-bedroom apartment, so it wasn't an issue of space. The problem was that we had different ideas of what staying together meant. I work from home, and my apartment is my sanctuary. I've been really protective of my personal space because it's the only place where I can fully relax. I didn't want to make the same mistake my parents did with me and push her out, but I also wasn't thrilled about sharing my space with her. Still, I told myself I could be accommodating for a while. Well, after she moved in, things started to go downhill quickly. She was extremely moody, and every time I tried to talk to her, it felt like she was shutting me out. She spent most of her time in her room, coming out only to complain about how stressed out she was or to snap at me for something small like leaving the dishes in the sink. I'd come home after a long day of work to find her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, acting like everything was fine, but then she'd blow up over something tiny and passive-aggressive. The real problem started when she brought her ex-boyfriend over one night. I didn't know she was planning to do that, and I wasn't happy about it. I have very little tolerance for drama, and I definitely didn't want to be in the middle of their mess. I asked her politely to keep him out of the apartment, especially since it was a small space and I work from home. She told me I was being controlling and overbearing, and that it was none of my business if she wanted to see him. I tried to let it go, but it kept happening. They were constantly talking about their relationship problems around me, and it became emotionally exhausting. There was no peace in my own home. Every time I'd ask her to keep things down, she'd accuse me of being too uptight or not understanding. Eventually, I reached my breaking point. I told her that it was time for her to find another place to stay. She got defensive and said I was being selfish, that I had no empathy for her situation, and that I was just like our parents, abandoning her when she needed help the most. That hit me hard. I tried to explain that it wasn't about me abandoning her, but about respecting boundaries. She refused to listen. Now, she's telling the rest of our family that I kicked her out of my apartment, and they're all upset with me. My parents have actually called me to tell me I should have done more for her, and that I'm being too harsh and selfish. Some of my friends think I was justified in setting boundaries, but others are telling me I should have just let her stay and been more understanding. I'm feeling like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I feel like I gave her a chance to stay with me, and I try to be supportive, but on the other hand, I don't want to be emotionally drained and uncomfortable in my own home. So, AITA for asking her to leave? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for confronting my sister after she secretly got engaged to my ex? So, this is a bit of a mess, and I'm still not sure how I feel about everything. I'm hoping I can get some perspective here. I, 29F, was in a long-term relationship with my ex, Jake, 32M, for about 5 years. We started dating when we were both in college, and it was serious from the start. We even talked about getting married, had those long conversations about kids, our future, all that. I thought we were heading towards forever, but we broke up about a year ago. The breakup wasn't dramatic or anything. We just kind of grew apart. Jake started spending more time at work, and I felt like we weren't communicating as much. I ended up confronting him about it, and we both agreed that it was better to go our separate ways than keep forcing something that wasn't working anymore. It was mutual, and while it hurt, I accepted it. I never expected him to be one of those people who would just stay stuck in the past, so I assumed we'd both move on eventually. Now, my sister, Lily, 27F, and I have always been pretty close. Growing up, we were best friends, always there for each other. We're not perfect, but we've always had each other's backs, or at least that's what I thought. In the months following the breakup, Lily was really supportive of me. She'd check in all the time, come over with takeout to watch movies, and help me pack up the stuff Jake left behind. It was rough, but I appreciated her being there for me. A couple of months ago, I noticed something weird. I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw Lily post a picture of her and Jake together. It wasn't anything too weird, just them at a concert, but I didn't recognize the other people in the group. I wasn't concerned at first, but then there were more posts, photos of them at dinner, at the beach, going on trips together. I figured they were just hanging out as friends. After all, they had met each other a few times during the time Jake and I were together, and Lily and Jake had always gotten along fine. But then, last week, I saw something that completely flipped everything. Lily posted a picture of herself with a ring on her finger, and in the caption, she said something like, "Couldn't be more excited for the next chapter with you, Jake." I froze. My first thought was, no way, this can't be happening. I immediately called her, and when she picked up, I just blurted out, "Are you seriously engaged, Jake?" There was a long pause on the other end before she replied, "Yeah, I didn't want to tell you like this, but I didn't know how else to do it. We've been dating for a few months now, and it just happened really fast." I was stunned. "You've been dating Jake? Are you serious? How long has this been going on?" She explained that it started shortly after my breakup with Jake. Apparently, they had started talking more, and it turned into something romantic. She said it wasn't planned, it just happened, and they were really happy together. I was honestly in disbelief. Not only was I still processing my own breakup, but now my sister was engaged to my ex. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't help myself. I asked her, "How could you do this? After everything we've been through together, you really thought it was okay to go behind my back like this?" Lily got defensive. "I didn't go behind your back. I just didn't know how to tell you. You've been hurt, and I didn't want to make it worse. I figured you'd understand when you were ready." I told her, "This isn't just something you drop on someone when they're ready. This is something you talk about beforehand. You should have told me, not waited until I found out on my own. I can't believe you're marrying my ex, of all people." She started crying, and that made me feel even worse, but I was so angry. "I don't want to be a part of this," I said. I can't pretend that everything's okay. This is a huge betrayal. Lily said that she wasn't trying to hurt me and that she loved Jake and that this was something that just happened. She kept apologizing, but it felt empty. It didn't feel like she was truly sorry for what she did. It felt like she was sorry I was upset. That conversation ended with her saying she didn't want to lose me, but she also wasn't going to break up with Jake. I told her I couldn't be a part of the wedding or even support their relationship right now. She seemed devastated, but I was at a loss for what else to say. Since then, things have been tense. I haven't spoken to her much. She sent a few texts trying to talk things through, but I just can't get over the fact that my sister, someone I trusted, would go behind my back and start dating Jake. It feels like a complete violation of trust. It's one thing for me to heal from the breakup and move on, but it feels like she's just rushing in without considering my feelings at all. Now, my parents are involved. They've reached out to me, telling me I need to be the bigger person and that I should try to support Lily in her decision. They say she's an adult and that I should understand she's allowed to choose who she wants to be with. But honestly, I can't get past the fact that they're acting like it's no big deal. My friends are split. Some think I should be more understanding, but others say I'm completely justified in feeling betrayed. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm losing my sister over this, but at the same time, I don't know how I can get over the fact that she's marrying Jake, the person I was in love with for so long. She's my sister, and I don't want to cut her out of my life, but I feel like she's completely disregarded my feelings and is just moving forward with this engagement without a second thought. So, AITA for being upset and not supporting their relationship? Or should I be more understanding and just let it go? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her toxic behavior toward my fiancé? I, 28M, have a sister, Emma, 30F, who has always had a bit of a competitive streak. We grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household with a lot of arguing, and it seemed like Emma always had to one-up me or make everything about her. As we got older, I just kind of accepted it and kept my distance, mostly because it was easier that way. My fiancée, Sarah, 27F, and I have been together for 4 years, and we've been engaged for a little over a year now. She's amazing, kind, supportive, and loves me for who I am, flaws and all. I could see myself spending the rest of my life with her, and I'm sure she feels the same. The problem started when Emma found out about our engagement. She didn't seem happy for us at all. She wasn't outright rude, but it was clear from the way she acted that she didn't like the attention wasn't on her. She started making passive-aggressive comments whenever we'd talk about wedding plans. I honestly didn't think much of it at first, but it started to get worse. One weekend, Sarah and I were talking about venues for our wedding, and Emma showed up uninvited at our place. She barged in and immediately began criticizing everything. She told Sarah that the venue we were considering was too tacky and not classy enough for someone with Sarah's high standards. Then she turned to me and said I was settling for someone who was too good to be true. I was taken aback, but didn't say anything because I didn't want to escalate things. I just tried to change the subject and asked her how her own wedding plans were going. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Emma told me she had started planning her wedding, but it was going to be exclusive and intimate. She said she didn't want a huge circus like mine was going to be. Of course, I didn't know about her getting engaged, so I was a little confused. She then made it clear that she expected me to drop everything and come to her wedding, whenever that would be, because it was going to be something special. She didn't even ask if I could make it, or if it clashed with our wedding date, or if it was even possible. She just assumed. I brushed it off, but things got worse from there. Sarah and I went to dinner with my family a few weeks later, and Emma spent the entire time making snide comments. She asked Sarah why she was settling for me and said that she would never let her boyfriend plan a wedding, let alone take charge of anything. This wasn't the first time she made comments like that, but it felt more pointed now. Sarah and I tried to laugh it off, but I could tell Sarah was hurt. She's a people pleaser, and it's hard for her to deal with people who are rude or dismissive. Then about a month ago, Emma did something that really pushed me to the edge. She invited me out to brunch, and it seemed like it was going to be a normal conversation, so I agreed. I was hoping we could talk things through, maybe mend some fences, but when I got there, Emma immediately brought up Sarah. She asked if I had finally convinced Sarah that she wasn't too good for me, and insinuated that Sarah was out of my league. Then, she said something that I couldn't let slide. "I know you think Sarah is perfect, but she's probably just in it for your money. You're just her project." My heart dropped. I've never once felt like Sarah was with me for anything other than love, and the idea of Emma talking about her like that, especially when Sarah had done nothing but be kind to her, made me livid. I didn't say anything in the moment, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I snapped and told Emma that I was done with her negativity and that if she couldn't be supportive of my relationship, then I didn't want her involved in my wedding at all. She was taken aback, but immediately went on the defensive, accusing me of siding with Sarah and saying that I was choosing my fiancé over my sister. She started crying and told me that I was ruining the family dynamic and that I was so selfish for not supporting her big day. It didn't end there. Emma sent me a long, angry message later that night, saying that if I didn't attend her wedding, I was no longer part of the family. She also said that it would be sad if I didn't make up with her before her wedding, because this would be the last time she'd ever speak to me if I wasn't there. I talked it over with Sarah, and after a lot of thought, I told Emma I wouldn't be attending her wedding. I told her that I wasn't going to sacrifice my relationship with Sarah for someone who had repeatedly been cruel and disrespectful. I also told her that, as far as I was concerned, I was no longer going to tolerate her treatment of Sarah and that I didn't want her toxicity in my life anymore. My family got involved, and now I'm getting pressure from my parents and other relatives to make amends and attend her wedding for the sake of family unity. Some of them say that I'm being childish and petty for refusing to go, especially when it's just a wedding and I should put my differences aside. My mom even implied that I was being too sensitive and shouldn't let Emma's words get to me. It's left me feeling torn. On one hand, I feel like I'm doing the right thing by standing up for Sarah and refusing to let Emma's toxic behavior slide. On the other hand, I don't want to be the one to create a rift in the family, especially when Emma is so insistent that this is a make or break situation for her. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her toxic behavior towards my fiancé? AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she tried to outshine me? I-28F recently got married to my wonderful husband, Ben, 30M. We've been together for 5 years, and our wedding was something we'd both dreamed of for a long time. It was supposed to be a beautiful day to celebrate our love, surrounded by our closest friends and family. But things didn't go according to plan, and now I'm being accused of ruining my own wedding. A little backstory. My sister, Emma, 26F, and I have always had a somewhat competitive relationship. Growing up, she was the one who always needed attention, whether it was in school, sports, or even family events. She's incredibly beautiful, and she knows it. I'm not unattractive by any means, but I've never been the one to demand attention or try to one-up others. I've always preferred staying in the background. When I got engaged, I asked Emma to be my maid of honor, as she's my only sister and we've had some good times together as adults. But I'll admit, I had some reservations. I knew her tendency to want to be the center of attention, and I was concerned she might overshadow the day. But I didn't want to be dramatic or cause any rifts, so I went ahead with asking her. The lead up to the wedding was stressful, but mostly manageable. Emma was involved in the planning, and while she did express some opinions that weren't in line with my vision, I tried to accommodate her where I could, thinking that she'd ultimately support me on the big day. The wedding day itself arrived, and everything was looking perfect. My dress was beautiful, Ben looked handsome, and all of our guests seemed excited. The ceremony was emotional, and I felt like everything was going smoothly until the reception. That's when things went completely off the rails. I had a pretty traditional wedding, and one of the things I was most excited about was my first dance with Ben. We had picked a song that meant a lot to us, and it was a moment I had been anticipating for months. The problem started when Emma, who had been acting a little odd all day, started giving me some weird looks right before our dance. I brushed it off and focused on enjoying my moment with Ben. We started dancing, and everything was going great. But then, out of nowhere, Emma grabbed the mic from the DJ and announced she had a special performance. She then proceeded to jump onto the dance floor, grabbing Ben and pulling him into a completely different routine, dancing around him in a way that felt both inappropriate and awkward. I was in shock, just staring at the two of them. I could see Ben's face, and I could tell he was uncomfortable. The guests were all watching in confusion, some even awkwardly laughing because they had no idea what was happening. It was so far from what I'd envisioned for my first dance. I tried to pull her away, but she insisted, saying she was just having fun and making the night more memorable. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to scream at her to get off the dance floor, but I also didn't want to cause a scene. So I stood there frozen while she made it her moment instead of mine. Finally, I asked the DJ to cut the music, and Emma reluctantly returned the mic, but she seemed smug, as though she had just pulled off some great performance. I was livid, but I still tried to push through. But that wasn't the only thing she did to overshadow me. Later in the evening, she started making a scene during my speech. I had written a heartfelt note for Ben and our guests, thanking everyone for coming and talking about how much I loved him. Mid-speech, Emma started loudly talking about how beautiful the day was and how everybody looks so great, trying to steal the spotlight again. She even interrupted me by toasting to herself, raising her glass and saying, "Here's to all of us, but especially to me. After all, without me, there would be no party." By this point, I was boiling. I couldn't believe she was so blatantly trying to steal attention from me. I was angry and embarrassed, but I didn't want to ruin the whole day. But the final straw came when she came up to me later and said, I was just trying to make sure the day was as special as it could be. It's a shame that you're so selfish, because I really just wanted to help everyone have a good time." That's when I lost it. I told her that I didn't need her help, especially not at the cost of making my wedding all about her. I told her to leave, right then and there. She started crying and tried to plead her case, but I was done. I told her I didn't want her in my wedding if she couldn't respect my space and my day. She left the reception in tears, and the rest of the night was kind of blur. I couldn't focus on anything except what had just happened. I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and sadness. I wanted to enjoy my wedding day, but instead, I was left feeling humiliated and exhausted. Now, I'm getting messages from my family saying I overreacted. They say Emma was just trying to have fun and that I should have let it slide. My parents are especially upset, saying I embarrassed them in front of the guests by kicking her out. Emma has been posting about it on social media, saying she was bullied and that I treated her terribly on what was supposed to be a happy occasion. I'm feeling torn. I know it was my wedding, and I should have been able to have the day I wanted, but I also feel bad for making her leave. I never wanted to cause a family rift over something like this. But I can't shake the feeling that my sister doesn't respect my boundaries and is constantly trying to overshadow me. AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding? Should I have just let her have her moment and dealt with it later? Or did I make the right call in standing up for myself? AITA for refusing to give up my engagement ring after my fiancé's sister demanded it back because it was family heirloom. So here's the situation. I'm 27F, engaged to my fiancé, Josh, 29M. We've been together for 4 years, and we got engaged about 7 months ago. Our relationship has been great overall, but recently things have gotten a little tense with his family, especially his sister, Claire, 32F. I knew Claire was a bit of a handful from the start, but things have escalated recently, and it's causing a lot of stress. A little background on the ring. Josh's family is fairly wealthy, and his mother has a collection of jewelry that's been passed down through the generations. One of the pieces in her collection is a very beautiful, very expensive diamond ring that was originally from Josh's great-grandmother. The ring had been the family for decades, and it was rumored to have been part of an arranged marriage between Josh's great-grandmother and her husband. There's some sentimental value to it because of the family history, but honestly, I never care much about any of that. When Josh proposed to me, he asked if I wanted the family ring, and I said no. I told him that while I appreciated the offer, I wanted my own ring, something that felt more us, so to speak. Josh completely respected that decision and went out of his way to find a ring that was perfect for me, something I loved. The ring I have now was custom-made, and it's nothing like the family heirloom. It's delicate, unique, and represents our journey together. Josh's mom, however, was not happy when I declined the family heirloom, and I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured it was just her being attached to family traditions. But now, fast forward to the last month or so. Claire has started being more vocal about the ring situation. She constantly brings it up at family gatherings and even tries to guilt-trip me by saying how it's such an important part of their family legacy and how it should stay in the family. She's gone so far as to tell me that if I didn't want the family ring, then I should just give it back so it could be passed on to someone else in the family. At first, I just brushed it off, but then she started making it more personal, like calling me selfish for rejecting the family's history and saying that it's not my decision to make. She claimed that the ring was meant to be passed down to someone within the family, and because Josh is the only son, it should go to his fiancée, which, in her mind, is me. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but then one evening, during dinner at Josh's parents' house, Claire straight up asked me to hand over the ring. She said that I wasn't appreciating the family legacy and that she didn't think I should be wearing someone else's ring because it was part of their heritage. The entire room went silent, and I could feel the pressure building up. I told her no, that I wasn't giving up my ring, and that the one Josh gave me is the one I want. She snapped at me, saying I was being disrespectful to the family, and that it was inappropriate for me to refuse such a generous offer. Her tone was so cold and condescending, and she made it seem like I was the one who was being unreasonable. Josh immediately stepped in, saying that it was my choice and that I didn't have to give up the ring. But his mom, who had been silent up to that point, then jumped in and agreed with Claire. She said something along the lines of, family is important, and traditions matter. She mentioned how the ring should stay within the family, and how Claire was just trying to keep the family bond strong. I was feeling uncomfortable and upset, and I tried to stay calm. I told them all that I wasn't rejecting the family. I just didn't want the ring. But at that point, Claire was looking at me like I had just insulted her entire existence. Things got awkward fast, and we ended up leaving shortly after. Josh apologized to me on the way home, but I could tell that he was frustrated too. He said he didn't know why Claire was pushing so hard for the ring, and that he would talk to her. But now, Josh is caught in the middle. He's been getting calls and texts from Claire and his mom asking him to convince me to hand over the ring, and they've both said that I'm ruining the family dynamic by being so stubborn about it. He's told them that the ring is mine and that they need to drop it, but I can tell it's causing him a lot of stress. So now I'm feeling like I've done something wrong. I'm starting to question if I should just give in and hand over the ring, even though it's something I truly love and cherish. I didn't ask for this family heirloom, and I don't feel connected to the history in the way they want me to. The pressure from his family is really starting to get to me, and I'm not sure if I'm being stubborn for no reason. It's starting to feel like they're trying to guilt-trip me into doing something I'm not comfortable with. I don't want to make things worse with Josh's family, but I also don't want to give in to something I don't believe in. I'm also upset that they're trying to make me feel like I'm disrespecting the family, when all I did was choose a ring I liked. AITA for refusing to give up my engagement ring? I, 29F, have a younger brother, Jake, 26M, who has always been the wild one in the family. He has a long history of doing things that raise eyebrows. Everything from getting into trouble in high school to constantly making poor decisions in his personal life. Over the years, my parents have always excused his behavior, saying he's just finding himself or going through a phase, but it's been hard to deal with for me. I've always been the responsible one. I went to college, got a stable job, and have always been the one who took care of family events, making sure everything was organized and in order. I'm very close with my fiancé, Mark, 31M, and we've been engaged for almost a year now. Our wedding is coming up in a few months, and we've been planning every detail down to the last minute. We have a very specific vision for how we want things to go. One of the things we both agreed on was that we wanted the ceremony to be intimate, close family and friends only. Because my brother and I have had a bit of a rocky relationship in the past due to some of his reckless behavior, I wasn't initially sure how I felt about him being part of my wedding in a major role, like being a groomsman. However, after a lot of back and forth with our parents, I agreed to let Jake come as a guest and even gave him a +1. I won't lie, I had concerns. Jake's idea of dressing appropriately for an event is wearing ripped jeans and band t-shirts, and he doesn't exactly have the best track record when it comes to behaving well in formal settings. Still, I wanted to be the bigger person, and I hoped that this would be a chance for him to show some maturity. Mark was supportive of the decision, though he had some reservations too. He wasn't the biggest fan of my brother, but he understood family dynamics and didn't want to create any tension. Now, fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was going perfectly, except Jake. From the moment he arrived at the venue, I could tell something was off. He was wearing a sloppy leather jacket over a t-shirt with a vulgar graphic on it, paired with ripped jeans. At first, I tried to ignore it, figuring maybe it was just his style and he was being Jake. But as the ceremony went on, things started to escalate. The real problem came during the reception. Mark and I had our first dance, and everyone was watching, smiling, and enjoying the moment. That's when I heard Jake making snide comments about how lame our wedding was and how he wouldn't have spent all this money on flowers. I tried to ignore it, but then he got louder, talking about how he thought the whole wedding industry was a scam and how Mark and I were just buying into it. I was so embarrassed, but I kept it together for the sake of the day. But then it got worse. He went up to Mark during the reception to congratulate him on marrying me. And in front of everyone, he made a joke about how lucky Mark was, but followed it with, "You better hope she doesn't turn into a bridezilla once she gets the ring." I saw Mark's face drop, and I knew that was crossing a line. It wasn't just a harmless joke. It was a jab at our relationship, our special day, and my character. At this point, I was beyond upset. Mark had been nothing but kind and patient with Jake for years, and here my brother was, making him feel uncomfortable and unwelcome on the most important day of our lives. I had enough. I pulled Jake aside and told him that his behavior wasn't acceptable, and if he didn't apologize immediately, he would have to leave. He laughed in my face and said, "What? Are you serious? I'm just having fun. Everyone else is laughing." I could feel my blood boiling. This wasn't fun. It was rude, disrespectful, and completely unnecessary. I told him again that he needed to leave, and when he refused, I turned to my parents, hoping they would step in. They just stood there, looking uncomfortable but not saying anything. That's when I made the decision. I told Jake that if he wasn't willing to behave like an adult and respect the event, he had to leave immediately. He could either leave voluntarily, or I would have security escort him out. Jake was absolutely furious. He started yelling at me in front of everyone, calling me a bridezilla, and saying I was ruining the family. He told me I was choosing my fiancé over my brother, and that I was being dramatic. He stormed out, and the whole room went silent. I felt mortified, but also relieved. Later, my parents called me, saying I had gone too far and that I should have just let Jake be Jake. They claimed I embarrassed him and ruined the family dynamic. They also said I should have expected this behavior from him, and it wasn't my place to kick him out in front of everyone. My mom even said I should apologize to him because he was just trying to be funny. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I know I had to set boundaries with Jake. His behavior was unacceptable, and I wasn't going to let him ruin our special day. But on the other hand, I wonder if I went too far by kicking him out in front of everyone. I didn't want to create a scene, but I also didn't want to let him walk all over me or my fiancé. Now, I'm questioning if I handled it the right way, especially since my parents are so upset with me. So, AITA for kicking my brother out of my wedding after he embarrassed my fiancé? Okay, so this is a bit of a mess, and I'm still unsure if I'm in the wrong, but here's the situation. My 28M wife, Sarah, 27F, and I have been married for about 3 years now. We've always had a good relationship with my sister-in-law, Emily, 31F. She's been married to David, 34M, for the past 5 years, and they have a 5-year-old son. Max, Sarah, and Emily have always been really close, and they talk all the time. I've always been polite to Emily, but we're not as close as the two of them. I get along with David well enough, but we don't hang out outside of family gatherings much. Recently, Emily's marriage hit a huge bump when David left her. From what we've been told, he was having an affair, and it was a whole mess. He packed up, moved out, and basically stopped being involved in Max's life. Emily was devastated, but she seemed to be doing okay, just in a lot of emotional pain. However, things got worse quickly. Max started acting out a lot more, and Emily became more and more overwhelmed. This is where it gets tricky. About a month ago, Emily called Sarah and told her that she was struggling to keep it together and needed space to sort things out. She then asked if Max could stay with us for a little while. Sarah and I are both on the same page about not wanting to be the primary caregivers for anyone else's kid unless it's an emergency. I told Sarah that we could help in other ways, like keeping in touch with Emily, supporting her emotionally, maybe taking Max for the day here and there if Emily needed time to herself. But I was clear I didn't think it was a good idea for Max to stay with us full time. Sarah seemed fine with that first, but then Emily kept calling, texting, and sending messages like Max is just really struggling without his dad, or I don't know how I'm going to handle this without help. Eventually, Emily said she was just so exhausted and asked if Max could stay with us for a few weeks until she got back on her feet. I put my foot down at that point and told Sarah that it wasn't happening. We already have a busy life, and our house isn't set up for having a 5-year-old here full time. I didn't want to be in a situation where we were responsible for another person's kid for weeks, especially since I know how difficult it can be to manage a child when they're not in their usual routine, and Max had already been acting out. I told Sarah that Emily was putting too much on us, and it wasn't our responsibility to fix her life. If she needed professional help, then she should get it, but we couldn't be the solution to her problems. Sarah got upset with me for not being more understanding, and she said that I was being too harsh. She said that Emily was going through a tough time, and we needed to help her out, especially for Max's sake. I told her that I'm not heartless, but we have to set boundaries. We already help out by offering emotional support, and that should be enough. Now here's the part where it gets really messy. After I said no, Emily took to social media and started posting vague statuses about how some family members just don't care about others and how it's hard to find people who really have your back when everything falls apart. I didn't think much of it at first, but when Sarah saw it, she got really upset. She accused me of making her look bad in front of her sister and that I wasn't being a supportive husband. She's been distant ever since, and now there's tension between us. Sarah and I have always been on the same page when it comes to family matters, so this whole thing is really throwing me off. I understand Emily's upset, but I don't think it's fair for her to expect us to take on the responsibility of raising her kid while she figures her life out. AITA for refusing to let Max stay with us? I feel like I'm in the right here, but at the same time, I don't want to be the bad guy, especially in my own marriage. AITA for telling my sister that her wedding is not my problem anymore after she uninvited me. I, 29F, have always been close with my sister, Katie, 31F, or at least I thought we were. We've always had a bit of a complicated relationship, but that's not unusual for siblings, right? Growing up, we bickered and fought, but as we got older, we seemed to understand each other better. We went to college together, shared a lot of the same friends, and spent holidays together. We even lived together for a while after I graduated. Last year, Katie got engaged to her boyfriend, Ben, 32M, and like most engaged couples, she started planning her wedding. Initially, she seemed really excited, and of course, I was happy for her. I always thought I'd be one of her bridesmaids. I've seen how much she struggled with self-esteem and body image issues, so I was planning on supporting her the whole way. I knew it would be stressful, but we'd get through it, right? However, things started to go off track about 6 months ago. Katie became really obsessed with every little detail of the wedding, especially the guest list. At first, it was normal wedding stress, but then it started getting weird. She started asking me for advice on the seating chart and all the little nuances, but whenever I made suggestions, she would shoot them down, saying I didn't understand what she was trying to do. I try not to take it personally, thinking maybe she just had a vision for the wedding that was hard for me to grasp. Then came the day when Katie told me that she was cutting back on the guest list due to budget constraints. I totally understood that and told her I'd be happy to help out if she needed ideas on how to handle the situation. But then she said she had made some tough decisions and that I wouldn't be invited as one of the bridesmaids anymore. I was shocked. She told me that she wanted a smaller, more intimate wedding and that it just wasn't possible for me to be in the bridal party anymore because we'd had our issues in the past and that she wanted the day to be stress-free. At first, I thought maybe this was a misunderstanding, so I asked her to clarify. She started listing things like, you didn't always support me with Ben, and you're not as excited about the wedding as you should be, but honestly, I'd been as supportive as I could. She and Ben had been going through a rough patch around that time, but I never judged her for it. If anything, I'd been the one try to keep her calm when she was venting about him, so hearing her say this felt like a punch to the gut. I don't even know what not supporting her with Ben means, but it stung, especially coming from her. So I try to let it go. I figured that maybe it was a temporary decision and that things would smooth over. But then Katie sent me a text about a week later, basically telling me I was uninvited from the wedding completely. She said it wasn't personal, but that the wedding had become too much and she wanted a more positive and supportive environment. I felt completely blindsided. I tried to reach out to her to ask if we could talk about it, but she wouldn't respond to my calls or messages. After some back and forth with no response, I gave up, but the whole situation was weighing on me. I spent weeks feeling hurt and confused, and it didn't help that family members were texting me asking why I wasn't in the bridal party anymore. I didn't know what to say. It wasn't like I wanted to make a scene, but I also didn't think I should pretend everything was fine. So I told a few close family members what happened. They were sympathetic, but didn't want to get involved too much. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. Katie's wedding day was coming up, and the tension was unbearable. I felt excluded from everything, but I was still trying to be the bigger person. Then, my mother called me and said that Katie wanted to speak with me. I didn't know what to expect. She called me and asked if I was planning on attending the wedding at all. I was shocked she even asked. I told her that, honestly, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to cause drama, but I also didn't want to be there just to be a silent observer. It felt so weird. Katie then said, "I want you to come to the wedding, but I don't want any drama. Can we just be normal for one day and get along?" I told her I needed to think about it. After a lot of thinking, I made the decision to not go. I realized that no matter what I did, it wasn't going to be good enough. If I went, I'd be faking it, and if I didn't, I'd be called petty. Either way, it seemed like my presence was unwanted. I sent her a text a couple of days before the wedding, telling her I wasn't going to attend, and that she had made it clear I wasn't part of the event anymore. Katie was furious. She accused me of being selfish and dramatic. She said I was ruining her day by making it about myself. I told her I wasn't going to let her use me as a scapegoat anymore, and that her wedding wasn't my problem. My mom called me in tears, asking me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. Katie hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm honestly feeling a bit at peace with my decision. But at the same time, I feel guilty. I know weddings are stressful, and I don't want to ruin her special day, but I also don't think I should be treated like I don't matter. So, AITA for telling my sister her wedding is not my problem anymore. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding by exposing a family secret. I, 28F, have a complicated relationship with my sister, Jane, 30F. Growing up, we were never close. She was always the golden child in the family. Popular, outgoing, the one who excelled at everything she did. I was the opposite. I was quieter, nerdy, and struggled to fit in. Our parents, especially our mom, always favored Jane. They'd shower her with praise for things I never got credit for, and it created a lot of resentment on my part. Over the years, Jane and I drifted further apart. We had a few arguments here and there, but we never really became the type of siblings who could confide in each other. I met my boyfriend, Ben, 29M, in college, and we've been together for 6 years now. Ben is great, but he's not the kind of guy who loves big family events. He's more of an introvert and likes to keep to himself. That's not to say he doesn't care about me or my family, but he just doesn't thrive in the spotlight. I'm used to him sitting out of family gatherings or leaving early to avoid awkwardness. For the most part, I've never really pushed him to be more involved. When Jane got engaged, I wasn't exactly thrilled. I didn't have any animosity toward her fiancé, Mark, 32M, but I couldn't help feeling left out of the excitement. While I've always been a part of her life, I was never the one she called when she had a big event or needed advice. I didn't even get to meet Mark until after they were engaged, and by that point, Jane and I hadn't really spoken for months. But my mom was ecstatic, constantly talking about the wedding and how it would be the event of the decade. As much as I wanted to be supportive, I had my reservations. The wedding planning process was overwhelming. I was expected to be part of the bridal party, but Jane never asked for my opinion on anything. She made all the decisions on her own, and whenever I tried to contribute or offer my help, it was met with dismissal. She would give me small, meaningless tasks like make sure you get your dress fitted on time, or show up early to help set up the reception, but nothing that made me feel like I was a meaningful part of her big day. Things came to a head a week before the wedding. My parents invited me over for dinner. And that's when my mom dropped a bombshell. She told me that Jane had found out about a secret from our family's past, something our parents had kept hidden for years. She'd been harboring resentment toward me for a long time because, according to my mom, Jane believed that I had stolen the attention from her by existing. This secret was something I had no idea about, and when I confronted Jane, she confirmed it. Apparently, when I was born, our parents had put all their attention on me because I was a sickly child, and they were afraid I wouldn't survive. Jane felt completely neglected during her early years and had been carrying that pain with her for the rest of her life. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. I had never known how much Jane had suffered in her childhood, and it made me feel guilty for never reaching out to her, for never trying to mend our broken relationship. But at the same time, it didn't justify the way she treated me throughout our adult lives. She was still holding on to old wounds that I didn't even know existed, and instead of talking to me about it, she just let it fester and poison our relationship. The week of the wedding, things took a strange turn. The night before the ceremony, I was at the rehearsal dinner. Jane, who had barely spoken to me throughout the entire process, pulled me aside and asked me if I could tone down my personality during the wedding day. She said I could be too intense sometimes and that I might overshadow her big moment. I was stunned. I hadn't even realized I'd been doing anything to upset her, but in that moment, I realized how deep her resentment went. I tried to keep calm, but I was upset and hurt. I told her I'd do whatever it took to make her happy, but in my mind, I knew I was already feeling like I was walking on eggshells in my own family. The day of the wedding came, and everything seemed perfect at first. The venue was beautiful. The guests were all dressed up, and Jane looked stunning in her dress. As I stood at the front, waiting for her to walk down the aisle, I felt this knot in my stomach. All these years of feeling invisible, of being the lesser sister, came rushing back to me. Jane had finally found a way to make her wedding day all about her, and she didn't want me to take away any of that spotlight. During the ceremony, things started to get tense. Jane and Mark exchanged vows, and everything was going smoothly until it was time for the best man speech. That's when a family secret came out. You see, my cousin Emily, 27F, had been planning to give a speech about how Jane had been her role model growing up. But instead of that, she suddenly dropped a bombshell of her own. Emily revealed that she knew about the family secret, about how Jane had been left in the background during my childhood and how that had affected their entire relationship. She mentioned how Jane had always been resentful of me and how it was affecting her relationship with Mark and the rest of the family. The room went silent. I was in shock. I never expected anyone to bring this up at such an important moment, especially not Emily. Jane looked absolutely furious. Her face turned red, and she stormed out of the venue in tears. Mark was visibly uncomfortable, and the guests didn't know what to say. I was mortified. I didn't know how to react. Part of me felt like Emily had exposed something that should have stayed private, but the other part of me felt like this was the first time in my life that someone had stood up for me. As the night went on, the mood became increasingly awkward. Jane didn't come back to the reception. My parents were furious with me for not stopping Emily from speaking out, even though I had no idea she was going to do that. They said I had ruined Jane's wedding and that I should have kept the peace. But I couldn't help feeling like everything that had led up to that moment was a ticking time bomb. Jane had been pretending like everything was fine for years, and I had no idea how much pain she was in. But now, in front of everyone, her bitterness and anger had been exposed for all to see. Afterward, my mom called me and said I was to blame for everything. She said I should have kept my mouth shut and that I had embarrassed our family. Jane and I haven't spoken since. My relationship with Ben is fine, but I'm still shaken by everything that happened. I keep wondering if I was wrong to let the secret come out, or if I was just the one who had to bear the consequences of something that had been festering for so long. So, AITA for letting the family secret be exposed at my sister's wedding? Could I have handled this differently? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.